Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast with your industry veteran hosts, Chris Tetzel. This podcast starts now.
Welcome to another Peers Over Beers. My name is Chris Tetzel, and we do have a special guest today, Maria Ogneva. Maria, how are you?
I am so well. How are you?
Doing well. It's been a long time since we've connected.
It has been a long time.
I think, I don't know that we've really just had a one-on-one conversation, like this. So.
Yeah, I don't think we have. I think it's mostly in groups, on Slack, on Zooms, on, what was that thing called? Clubhouse?
Yeah, for a bit. Yeah. Are you still on that?
Been there. No. Are you?
No, never. It had potential, but I just got there's too much stuff going on, and I was like, I don't get it. I'm not interested in this too much. So, well, hey, so you went to another company several months ago. I guess back in July or something like that. A company called Invoca, and we actually have a person in common that we know, but I'm interested to hear more. From my understanding, you're starting a community from scratch, and there's a lot of things within that process. Is that right? Is that you're starting a community there? And I'd love to know a little bit more about that piece. Why community? What's kind of the goal and things like that?
Yeah, sure. So you are correct. It was precisely last July when I started in Invoca. Actually, one of my old managers, well, not that she's old, but from a long time ago, one of my previous bosses, whom I absolutely adore, has been at Invoca, and she reached out. We chatted. It's all. I feel like the longer you do this job, and the more the more senior you get into your career, like all of the job referrals are primarily through your network. Like I
That's
cannot
right.
even tell you last time that I went on a website and filled out an application. It's all very much, word of mouth, right? And so typically people that you work with in the past who know your work and kind of what you're all about and the quality of your work reach out. And so this was no exception. So we chatted. I was really impressed with the company and the caliber of the leadership team and all the people who were working there. I'm in the marketing department, so everyone I've met has been absolutely incredible and really impressive. And I was like, hey, this is a really cool space. We're in the conversation intelligence space, so we help sales and marketing teams and digital leaders understand their conversations with customers and really transform their businesses that way. So it's a really exciting space, still early on. So being in something that is growing quickly, that's going to be the future of digital, is really exciting. And then, you're building the category. And so when I learned that there's an opportunity for community, it made me think of, some other opportunities where I was able to come in really kind of as the category was starting up. And what a fantastic thought leadership opportunity that gives to community members, right? To all the customers that are there sharing their tips and tricks. They're really at the vanguard, right? They're blazing trails when they're learning something so new and so transformational. And so I love doing that, right? What draws me to community is the ability to help people kind of find their voice, learn more, get better. And of course, learning in community is always better and much more multifaceted than if you just kind of read a book by yourself. You always learn so much more from your peers, right? Us in the community space, we came in, there were no books, there was no classes. We just kind of learned by doing and by talking to each other, right? And it's similar, right? And just allowing people to really kind of turbocharge their careers and really become leaders in the space that's so new, that's so fast growing, that is something that I love. And so that's kind of what drew me to the opportunity. So yeah, been here since July, starting up a new community from scratch. It's everything that it always is. It's nerve-wracking. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of aligning internally, externally, but it's all in good fun.
Yeah, I agree. And, I apologize, but let's go back because you have extensive knowledge in community. You've worked at a lot of places like Sidecar Technologies, you're a head of community there. Sumo Logic, you're a head of community there. LinkedIn, you're a global head of community there. Financial Force, you're director of online community experience and community. That's kind of how that reads. But and then now at Invoca, you're director of community and customer marketing. So lots of experience in building, from what I can tell, B2B communities, right? And just doing look. I've known about you for a long time, and I've kind of kept up with you a little bit, and I was always very like. Always good things have been said about you and just how you built your communities and how you go in and look at the customer experience and things like that, so just wanted to go backwards and say, thank you so much for coming on Peers Over Beers. It means a lot to me. And I know our audience will appreciate kind of what they're going to hear today because of all your experience and knowledge of communities. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we learn from each other,
Yeah, that's right.
We're all in this. Yeah.
And that's why I love having, leaders like yourself on Peers Over Beers, because to be honest, I know that others are going to learn, but I learn a lot. So it helps me to have these conversations and things like that. So, well, that's really cool about Invoca and the opportunity that you have there. Sounds like, you've done a lot of stuff. So we haven't even really started and kind of when you look at back in July, August, when you kind of first started Invoca, and what are the first things that you go do? What do you, because I know the things I do, but I'm interested to hear your point of view. Like you were telling me stuff on the pre-show and I was like, yeah, maybe I should have done that. So I'd love to hear kind of the first, maybe it's a few months, and what do you start to do? What do you think about? What are you trying to accomplish at the end of the day?
Sure. So, well, at Invoca, community and customer marketing falls under me. And so when I came in, we were actually in the thick of planning our major user conference that happens once a year. And so, unfortunately, the community was not going to be up in time for that last year because, it takes some time to get it up and running, which I'll get to in a second. But it was an awesome opportunity to actually jump into the deep end and really get to know our customers. So one thing that I specifically had to run, kind of soup to nuts, was our award show. So we have, each year we give awards to the best and brightest in our category, to the most innovative companies who are using Invoca in interesting ways and the cool results they're seeing. And so it was awesome because it gave me an opportunity to get to know all of these amazing people right out the bat. And the reason I bring it up is because, obviously the show is about community, not customer marketing, but I think there's a lot of there's a lot of common ground. And when we're talking about, your kind of your biggest advocates, the people really on the cutting edge who are also willing and able to share their story for the betterment of the community. What you're talking about when you're talking about that group, that's kind of the kernel that you would start your community with anyway, right? So I just had this really cool accelerant where I just got to know a lot of people really well right off the bat, in a very fun setting where it's hey, you've been nominated for this award. So
that's pretty cool, right? I like that. You get to meet the customers right off, and so and it starts getting you thinking also of later, when you start that community and how are you going to seek questions, how are you going to get people to talk to each other. You can call on to those people that nominated for the award and things like that, or maybe people within that company. So, I mean, to me,
Yeah, because
that's great.
the people who win the award are people who are really doing interesting stuff. That's why they're nominated. That's why they're the winner. So you want to kind of make sure that you are able to build like a really mutually beneficial relationship with them, to where you can continue to provide opportunity for them to have a platform for their expertise, right? And so community is one of those platforms, and that's fantastic. So what we actually did a few months after that, we got in touch with like 20 or so of our kind of, again, our very celebrated champions, and we said, hey, we're thinking about this community. Like, this is before the vendor was selected. This is before we kind of had any preconceived notions about what it would be. Be like, hey, can you chat with me for like 15 minutes? We're thinking about this community. What would have to be true about this community for you to get value out of it, right? And so we went and we asked everyone kind of a set of standard questions, but it really helped us to understand like not just what kind of functionality the community should have, but also in terms of programming, what is actually useful. Because the last thing you want to do, again, and this goes back to starting from scratch, you don't know anything. You want to come into it with a beginner mind, even if you've built like tons of communities before. Like each one is like a fresh new thing. It's like a brand new baby. Not going to be like others. I mean,
there's similarities, but I agree
they
with
all
you.
have similar, they all have similar elements, of course, but like, you want to try to forget as much as you can, in terms of like the structure and the content and the types of things that you will do in there from a programming perspective, and then just allow the community to lead you. Because what you don't want to do is like, community is not something you do to other people, it's something you do with other people. And so the more that you can kind of get this groundswell of people excited about it, talking about it, sharing their ideas with you, the easier it's going to be later when you launch.
What I like what you said though, Maria, and it's a big buzzword today. It's community led, right? And those are the things that you're talking about. So, I mean, we've been doing this for a long time, so we already know this. It's not really something new. I feel like organizations do this a lot. I mean, the last thing they want to do is not have it community led. I'm not saying organizations don't make mistakes, but for the most part, we've been doing this for years. This is not something new. But I love how you said that though, because that's exactly what you're doing. It's community led. So keep going. Sorry.
Exactly. No, we can't underscore that highly enough, right? Like, it's not possible to overstate how important that is. Yeah. So thanks for putting a finer point on it. So that's on the customer side, right? So as you're starting up, you want to try to understand who are the customers, first of all, who are excited about the space, right? Like, this is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to do it with people who are actually like excited about the future. There'll be a time to bring laggards onto the thing later, but you want to start with, the art of the possible. And you want to ask people what they would want to see, right? And if you can, like, try to interview customers who are new, as well as customers who've been with you for a while, because then, customers who've been around for a while, they're experts. They may not remember kind of like what kind of support they needed when they were new. Yeah. So it's just useful to kind of cover a lot of ground in terms of customers who are new, customers who've been around the block a few times, and just kind of span the gamut, large companies, small companies, whatever, because you want to make it good for everyone. You want to solve real needs, right? Your job is to understand, like, what is the problem you're solving. You're not just building it just because someone gave you a job and said, build a community. Like, it has to actually solve the need, right? Okay, so that's the first thing,
For
the
sure.
customers. The second thing is the work that you're going to do internally.
Mhm.
So obviously we all have bosses, right? And every company has an executive team. And so you really want to make your community like really strategic. But how do you make it strategic? You want to understand what's important to the organization.
Mhm.
So, when you go to like all hands, you listen to like, the readouts, quarterly readouts that your CFO gives you, the strategy that the CEO talks to. You want to really understand that and internalize it and ask yourself like all the time, is the community I'm building, is the stuff I'm doing actually help that goal
Yep.
that was kind of set for the whole company? And if it doesn't, like you really need to kind of readjust a little bit so that you are solving problems, because again, like your company brought you in to help make the company successful or more successful, right? To usher into the new stage of growth. How are you going to do that? By solving like the actual, by helping community kind of align to the strategic direction that's been set out, that takes you into that next phase of growth, right? Or the next phase of whatever your company is in. So that's really, really important, right? And so you want to be able to always point to how you are solving that big thing, because that's how you get legitimacy. And people are like, oh, wow, this community thing,
Absolutely.
It's important. It's delivering results. Let's keep funding it. And
Maria, I'll say, you can't stress enough how important it is for your community goals to line up to the company goals. Like for example,
100%.
you've got your company goals. Like I report to the CMO today, right? And so we know that, community for me has always been more of a customer success or a success or customer thing. It's not, it always will be that. But I think, if you're not solving some of these marketing goals that are actually rolling up into, those main company goals, but the nice thing about community is it can roll up to a lot of different goals, product, customer, we call it customers, like our customer success and support and a bunch of other stuff there. So that's the opportunity, but you really need to align it with that. We have a thing called plan on a page. And so you put your plan on a page and everything there just lines up directly with the marketing goals, and those goals directly line up to the business goals. If it's not doing that, like you said, you have to think, you have to do that. Community isn't all about always hanging out with your friends, hanging out with, the community people, and, you are there for a reason, and the goals are the goals, and you've got to accomplish those goals, or at least let those wrap.
Yeah.
I see a lot of tactical things that go on in some of these communities, and, it's just, you got to look at the strategic view of community versus all the tactical things you have to go do. These tactical things are in the roadmap that you can push to drive to that strategic vision and goal and everything else. But you hit it right, and I love how you said it. So that's why I just wanted to push that, to say thank you for saying that, and I agree. So good stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So I am on the marketing team actually, but I'm very lucky to have two executive sponsors. So obviously our CMO, who was my my old boss from a long time ago, again, whom I absolutely adore. She is one of my executive sponsors, and
Awesome.
our head of customer success, chief customer officer, is someone we know together in common. She's my other
she's
executive
awesome.
sponsor, and so she is so awesome. So I not only do I have two amazing executive sponsors in two different departments, but they're also like both amazing, and they're both such accomplished women leaders, and that's always
love it.
That's always great. So I'm very lucky in that I have two. So it helps me make sure that I am aligning this community to meet the needs of like as many of these important stakeholders as possible. And so what I did, and I've always done this in the past companies, but I feel like this time I kind of did it in a more kind of prescriptive way, if you would. I assembled a steering committee. So apart from the two executive sponsors, I leveraged, I started to build relationships with key executive stakeholders across the company that whom community either would impact somehow, or whose lives I could potentially improve, right? Meaning their department's deliverables, or from whom like we would need to partner with. So, right, like, so an executive like in charge of IT, for example, like we're going to need systems help, right?
Yep.
We want to make sure that what we're building is like technically sound and actually is good for kind of our technology stack, right? So like all these different groups, they have to be consulted, they have to be brought into the fold, and they have to be kept abreast. And you want to take their input as well. And by having like this extremely cross-functional team working with me on the strategy, like before I even like talk to any vendors, right? This allowed me to ensure that I'm not operating with any blind spots, right? Because I sit where I sit, I'm in marketing. That's where kind of my world revolves around, but like, I try to know a lot about a lot, but like, you're just not going to know everything, right? And like, no matter how many Slack channels you're in, there's no one that can speak to kind of the big picture of the department than the person who's in charge of the department, right? And that person can actually steer you, like once you kind of get through the strategy ideation, that person can actually steer you to the right people on their team to help you get it done. And so it's really, really important for a number of reasons. It helps people understand your vision. It helps people contribute to your vision. It helps you not have the blind spots, and it helps you build really solid relationships like outside of your department, and helps like other people get really excited about it. So that, you know, I mean, I'm a team of two. Sometimes you're a team of one. And so you're going to need like all the resources that you can get. And so the ability to manage cross-functionally and to beg, borrow, and steal across the organization is basically like what a good community leader has to be able to do.
You've got to be able to influence.
Value.
I think
you
that's
have to be able to
at the end of the day, you know, and getting those people excited. And like you said, I think that's exactly what I do is, you know, when I go into the organization, the first thing is I just start talking to people, talking to leaders, there's people I know that are really smart in the organization that aren't leaders, but I got to go find those people because they're the ones going to be helping to do whatever programs that we do. For us, it's a webinar program, or I call it the community show. You know, they're really smart about the product, so they're going to do that stuff. But I got to talk to their leaders to let them know that they're going to be doing that stuff at some point, you know, and, you know, so you're right, aligning all those things together, your goals and what you can accomplish, getting those leaders excited, and just letting them know, hey, just so you know, I'll be probably pinging your department, and they'll probably helping you do a bunch of stuff like answering questions, helping write blogs, helping to, you know, whatever, you know, be on the webinars and lead some of that stuff because it's an opportunity for them. And that's the way I present it, is the opportunity to really evangelize yourself or promote yourself. I'm here to do that for you. But, you know, the way we do it is through community. And, you know, when you author a blog, when you actually are the speaker on a webinar, when you answer those questions, your name's out there now. You know, you're on video for good, you know, and you're on those blogs for good. And, you know, now you can put that if you want on your resume and all that kind of stuff. And that's how I do it, you know, and I think that people get excited about it. Not everybody, you know, like we know, everybody's different on how they want to engage with different things, whether it's community or in life and things like that. So you have to build these programs that allow even employees to engage in your community with your customers, and for us, our partners too. So love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we sat together as the steering committee team, and we aligned, you know, again, when you're talking to executives, you're not going to get in the weeds. You're not going to get into your program management. You're going to keep it really high level. And we used a few of our sessions together to really align on the key priorities for community. We were able to prioritize them against each other. and to come up with how we're going to measure success, because that's really, really important, because that is your accountability. That. And so you want to be able to report back to the same steering committee, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 24 months after you're live, with like how you did against these things that you said you were going to do. Your CFO, right? If you're probably spending a chunk of money on these platforms, they're not cheap. And so your CFO is like, hey, I gave you all this money. Like, what happened as a result? So you want to have those answers. So how you're going to measure it is actually really important. And that's going to play in hugely into your vendor selection. So hold that thought for a minute. I'll circle back to that in a few minutes.
Okay.
So because we created the strategy together as a team, and because, the things that we said the community was going to do are so bold and kind of cross-functionally aligned and aligned to our big goal as a company, people are like excited about it, right?
Yeah.
They are more willing to then, after you kind of did this collaborative strategy, if you ever need resources to support this thing that they are excited about, that they've participated in, they are more willing to give you some resources. So we had a situation where we needed an engineer for the implementation team. This is, fast forwarding a little bit after we selected the vendor, and we ended up losing that engineer. And so we had to quickly, cover our bases. But we're able to do that because we built a good relationship with kind of the product and engineering side of the house. Like, everybody was kind of connected into why is this important. So, and again, the kind of repeating the value that this is going to bring to our customers and to the company. You can never do that too much, because then people are, are like, what am I working on? Why did you put me on this project? It's important, and you can't do it. It's impossible to overdo it, right? So you want to keep reiterating the value and getting people excited. It contributes to this.
It's ongoing. Like,
it's ongoing. Yeah.
I think that, and one of the things that I've done over this last year, and I even did it at the last company, is anytime there's a time to speak in front of the entire company, which I get to do that every 6 weeks, so there's 3 different places that now I can speak. One is, maybe 4, but one is in an all hands meeting once every 6 weeks, which anybody can come on. Usually there's maybe 200 or 300, not 3, about 200 people on. So most of the time the executives are on. 2 is and we have these things called, they're operating mechanisms called ROCs. So there are Reltio operating committees. And so we have an executive level ROC. And so I get to talk every 6 weeks, 7 weeks on that. And then every 6 or 7 weeks on, the all hands, which is just an HR thing. And then we have these sub ROC type things. I'm on a partner sub ROC and looking at maybe a sales kind of thing. The opportunity to do that and get in front of those leaders and show the value that you're bringing with your community, and get in front of them as much as possible, especially after the fact that it goes live, which I know you already know all this stuff, but putting yourself, like, not so long ago, the HR person, hey, Chris, in 2 days, I need somebody to speak about something. Can you please speak about community? And I'm like, all right, I only got 2 days. Okay, fine. I'll figure it out. Right. So.
Yeah. Take every opportunity you can. There's, you need to constantly be marketing to your customers, but you also have to market internally.
Absolutely.
Just as much, if not more. Right? Your internal employees is what really powers your community work. So without that, you don't really have anything. Okay, so we have the steering committee. We aligned on a strategy. We know what we're measuring, stuff like that. And then that's when you can start getting into like understanding what is the functionality that your community is going to have. And the cool thing is that you've put together your strategy. So your feature set just kind of should like flow out of that. So it sounds like a lot of work, and you actually end up spending like, quite a bit of time, right, on this kind of initial setup without you ever like talking about any features. But that is time so well spent. Like my favorite proverb is like, I can go fast alone. You can go fast alone, but you can go further together. So it's always worth your time to slow down. You don't need to rush into anything, even though you may feel the urgency to like start proving yourself. It's always worth your while to slow down, figure out why, figure out who, and like how to position it in a way that it's the most impactful.
I like the go slow to go fast. You
go slow to go fast. Yeah. But
absolutely.
like we spent a few months on that, right? Like before anyone stepped into any kind of implementation. So then, because I knew what I was doing, like what in general terms this community had to deliver, it was kind of easier to go from there to a feature set. Then you start talking to vendors, then you kind of narrow down this pool of vendors that you've talked to. And then, then you can actually start selecting a vendor based on the features that would allow you to reach those big goals. But also, you want to always understand like how, if you're going to be able to measure what you said you were going to measure. This is why I was like, hey, we'll circle back around to this in a few minutes. So here we are, right? That is a critical part of vendor selection. You need to understand, what does data look like? Who can take data out? Where you can take the data to? How is it logged? Where is it logged? How easy or hard is it to take out into like whatever BI system you have, like a Tableau and whatnot? And so you want to kind of get ahead of that, right? Because the last thing you want to do is have a community that's up and running. It's wonderful, but you don't actually know how to measure it. And you can't actually get to those things that you said you were going to measure because you didn't do your homework. So I'm not saying it's the only basis on which to select your platform, but it's one of the many things to think through.
I think it's a big thing, Maria. And I think, look, there's a lot of things to look at, but, at the end of the day, you got to prove value, and you got to understand, well, all right, you went to your executives and said, this is the value that we're going to bring. And then you need a vendor to allow you to show that as best as possible. I'm not saying you're not going to have to get, Google Analytics and, so there's probably a few places that you'll get your data, but like you said, how easy or how can you move that data over into like a Power BI or Tableau or whatever to allow you to make that data pretty, and make it digestible and that it's
and allow
helping to accomplish your
use
goals. Allow anyone to, I like that a lot. And I could probably learn from you on that piece, because allowing people to use it would be amazing. So if it was somebody in customer success and it was case deflection, or if it's somebody in marketing that, maybe we got a new lead, or maybe we got a new something, that just going to help sales and that kind of stuff, and proving that out, instead of you have to teach and, learn, teach, learn kind of thing, right? You learn it, you teach it, you learn it, that kind of stuff. But once these other organizations can see it and learn it and understand it, they start using that stuff. That's powerful. Yeah. Do that. I love that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is why you want to involve, via the kind of executive work, whoever's in charge of your systems is a really important partner, because that's where you start to understand like, we standardize everything on Power BI or Tableau. Like you wouldn't know this if you just went into like this vendor selection process by yourself. But like this allows you to ask like really smart questions that allow you to actually vet it against, not just against other vendors, but like also in support of your own data strategy as a company, right?
Yeah, so that's good.
Again, stuff, really happy. I like got to know our data team and kind of how things work well before I signed any contracts with any vendors. Anyway, so this actually is a nice pivot into the next point. So just like I had the executive team, the executive steering committee kind of aligning on the strategy, I assembled a technology council to help me vet these, like picked our top 3. And we're like, hey, I want like all the smart technical people on my organization to vet these 3 choices from a technical perspective, right? Like, again, like you want to vet it from a feature perspective, right? If like, let's say, you're running product and you want customer feedback, right? You want to take a look at kind of how the feedback actually happens with customers, right? But also you want to bring in people who kind of hold the different parts of your tech stack in their hands operationally, and understand how everything is going to fit together. Your platform is going to fit with whatever you use for CRM, more than likely Salesforce, Gainsight, right? Like, what are all the different tools that intersect, and that your community should, maybe at least not initially, but at some point should integrate with, or take data from, or put data into, right? And so on the team was like our head of marketing ops, head of customer success ops, Salesforce developers, again, my partner who manages our entire technology team. And you just want to have like all these different representatives to help you vet and ask good questions, because they have some questions too, right? So you want to have these like sessions for the whole team where they can ask questions directly to the vendor. So then you kind of, from there, I went and I filled out scorecards for each of the 3 vendors. Actually, there are a few out on the web. My favorite one is probably from our friends at In Before the Lock. They have a great template, which I literally went and I copied it. Like, it literally says, go in and copy and make your own. And that's what I did. But the beauty of specifically that template is that it helps you kind of think through things holistically, right? Like, it helps you think of the vendor's kind of strengths as you see them. And also, like, what does the vendor think their strengths are? Mm-hmm. And then it also allowed me to kind of extrapolate a little bit on that thinking, understand, like, where the vendor is going in the future, right? Because you do the scorecard on the features that, again, are aligned to your strategy, right? Yeah. Like, which one just delivers better on the functionality. Kind of roughly the same, give or take a few. They're very, like, everyone's going to have like questions and answers and ideas, right? But like, they do things in a sometimes in a pretty vastly different way, right? Data is different, integrations are different, but like, at its core, you have conversations, you have groups,
Yeah, most of them do that, but anyway, I think you hit a point on, and I think integrations are a big thing, right? Yeah. So, like for example, ideation. If a vendor, like most of these vendors have ideas, but not all vendors will integrate into like Jira and then write back to, right into Jira and Jira writing back to the community ideation platform. So I say that because, the way that PMs work on a daily basis is through Jira or something like that, right? Like, they don't go to other places. They don't want to go anywhere else. They want to put their information right there in Jira, and they hit send or save, and then that should go back directly, and it's like, a lot of times, because when you start competing with, things like AHA and because AHA is only an ideation platform, right? So if your vendor can't do the basics like that, I'm not saying it has to be as good as AHA, but it has to do the basics, like I just said, and if it doesn't, then, so there's just one example of, I know that, like, some vendors, community vendors do a very good job, and they get the technology market, right? Like but not everyone does. Like the vendor over here, yes, they have Q&A, they have blogs, they have these things, but their integration strategy in other business systems like Salesforce or, Jira or any other system is not that it can't be done, but it's very difficult. You know what I mean? So, I think that's key, especially for a
Yeah,
B2B
and
company like ours.
Yeah, and not every like Salesforce integration is the same either, right?
Exactly.
Some have a managed package, some have an unmanaged package, some integrate via API. Like these all have like serious pros and cons. So this is
That's
why
right.
you need to have your technical steering team to help vet, like, hey, how do we feel about this type of integration? How we feel. Anyway, so I did the scorecards based on feature and functionality, but also it allowed me to like interview each vendor and be like, so what are you excited about in the future? Tell me a little bit about your roadmap. Where do you see community in 5 years? And also like, this is kind of not obvious, but you want to make sure that whatever vendor you're selecting is going to be around for a while, because community migration, as anyone who's gone through migration can tell you, it is not something you want to do. Migration sucks.
Yeah.
It is disruptive to your customers. You lose data. People hate it. Something always goes wrong. It's expensive. It's time consuming in terms of money, in terms of resources. Like it is a mess. So what you are trying to manage to is longevity. You want a community partner.
You want to do this once, Maria. You don't want to, if you're going to stay at the company for 5 years, you want that vendor to be with you for 5 years or however long, because the last thing you want to do is
you want it to outlive you too, right?
Absolutely.
Like after you leave, like the next person that takes over, it's like, wow, this is so great. It's so organized. I can just grow this thing, right? I don't have to worry about.
And the partner piece, and I love that.
Yeah. And so you want to make sure, like as much as possible, you want to try to understand their longevity, how long they've been around, how well funded they are, what their customers are, right? Like if they just have like a ton of really great customers, they're probably making enough money. But like, Peep, Crunchbase or whatever, try to understand how much money they've raised. And so these questions do end up coming up, like when you're talking to your steering committee about the recommendation you're making. You want to make sure that they feel comfortable with not just like who can do the job, but like, is this company a risky company? Right. And so you want to help people feel good about the choice you're making. So what we did with the technology team, I did the scorecards. I convened everyone together after we did the 3 demos with the vendors, and we had a debrief, and I just had everyone. We were lucky that we were in vehement agreement. You're not always going to have that, but it just shows that like, because we were all kind of aligned on the vision, and like I chose 3 good companies that they could all really support that vision, but in different ways. So we were able to really kind of agree on our top 1 and 2 choices. And I took those recommendations back to the steering committee. And then we just kind of grilled the data together as a executive team to come up with like the choice that we made, right? And so all those things went into consideration. Like, again, we went back to the strategy. We're like, hey, this tool, even though it's more expensive, it actually addresses like some of our self-service goals, like a lot better than those other tools. So like people actually felt more comfortable with a more expensive tool because it more holistically solved for what we were trying to solve too. Good thing we had that strategy. We knew what problems we were actually solving, right? So it all kind of, again, it all is circular. You kind of end up back where you started. And if you started from a solid place, like it all kind of just flows through that. But it's an intensive process. It is a lot of alignment, a lot of selling, right? A lot of painting of a vision when you don't even have a pixel on a page at that point. And just, right. Effective communication and effective leadership. That is all you're doing for the first 3 months, at least.
At least. No, I think you're right. Your job changes once, you start getting you start looking at how you're going to seed your community, who's going to be on the community. And, once that starts, it's you'll start promoting out, the numbers, where you're heading. You still want to get that executive alignment, all that stuff. But 100%. It's basically a different job. Your first 3 or 4 months is way different than the rest of your career. You know what I mean? Like, but I think they're crucial to what you have to go do to sell the value, sell the, do everything you just said. And, you did it just like a pro, you've done it before, I know, but this is exactly, I think, what our audience needs to hear. It's been really good. Now now the vendor selection is done. You already selected somebody. What's next?
Well, next is the implementation.
Yeah.
So, obviously there's contract negotiation. So again, you want to partner with somebody internally to help you come to the best terms that you can get. You have to also understand, you want everyone to be happy with the deal. You want definitely favorable terms, but you also want your vendor, because again, they're a partner. You want to be in business with them for at least 5 years. So you want them to be happy. You don't want them to discount it so much that they're not making a profit. So you just, it takes a little bit of dancing. But, you end up with a deal. Everyone signs on the dotted line. And then you can start the implementation project. And so, depending on how big and complex the platform is and how many of these integrations you need to do, it may take a little bit, it may take a long time. The implementation we're doing now is a little bit on the more complex side. So we also have a migration. Oh,
you did? I didn't.
It takes some time. Yeah, just stuff content, just like knowledge articles,
got it.
Not even like questions and answers, because that's much harder to migrate. And even like this content migration is just makes the project like a lot more complex. So just to underscore the point about migrations, you want to use them sparingly, if ever. Anyway, so that's where we are. We're in the migration process, but the implementation process. But while you're in the implementation process, what are you planning? You're always planning your next thing, right? What is the next thing? Launch.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So, launch all the elements. I've already started making my rounds with everyone at the company who's going to participate in the launch. Again, you never want to bring, especially something this big, to people at the last minute. You want to try to pad as much as possible, and people will really appreciate you for doing that.
I have to tell you a little story, because I think, you hit it right there. I think you got to create that buzz in the very beginning, and you got to continue to maintain that over time. But the buzz that you create today, like example, I created so much buzz in April of last year. So we'll be live a year on April 28th. And when I go look at the numbers, just the amount of people that clicked on the community, right? The number of users and things like that for the first 2 months was way higher than the next 6 months. Why? Because one is that let's say 2 weeks, because I did kind of a soft launch, and then I kind of then opened it up, and then had a bunch of people but there's so many people coming on, both employees, some customers and partners. I mean, it was crazy. And so then the numbers went down, which I knew they would, because you want to start seeing, because the things that I did, how do you get traffic to your site? Well, you can't always just email a bunch of people. That's one way, but you have to use the different channels, like for us, reltio.com, support.reltio.com, docs.reltio.com, inside the product, and all these other places so people know who you are and where you are, that kind of stuff. But that's another thing you have to think about, is how do you get on these digital sites? How do you, it's not always easy to do that, right? But so that's how we're getting our traffic today. And now SEO is starting to be a big play. It started, but our SEO numbers are like this, and I'm showing that in the next meeting is, the way we're going to get traffic, 80% of our traffic in the next 3 years will be from SEO. 80, close to 80, right?
Wow.
Right now, it'd be close. Maybe it'd be 60 to 80, but eventually, that's how these things work, right? It's people are searching for questions. People are, and so today we're probably only at 25, 27%. So just think, the beauty is so much more to go. It's going to be awesome, but but it's kind of cool to kind of look at that first launch and the excitement that you can bring to the organization, because it'll be all over the place, coming in, and the challenge is trying to maintain it. Sometimes you have to let off the gas to see, if a question's not being answered by an employee or something like that, it's okay. Let's see if anybody else answers it. So there's a lot of things you have to think about, yes, you want to answer quickly, but you also want to give other people opportunity to do it, because then they'll just expect us to do it the whole time. You know what I mean? So it's a fine line balance and everything else. So, but yeah, so yours is launch and probably seating and getting people, to come in first day or two or whenever. I did it for 2 weeks. I had seed questions for 2 weeks, for 2 days a week, or 2 days, twice a day for 2 weeks. I would have posts, and then I would send out emails directly to customers, and partners to say, hey, we're open, blah, blah, blah. And then more content going out. I had a blog every single week. Basically, even to this day, every single week I have some kind of content blog that is solving some kind of problem. Boom, 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 and so you've got to now start thinking about your content strategy, your engagement strategy, and the roadmap to drive all those things, which I assume you probably have a lot of that, right? So getting there anyways.
Yes, this is while you're implementation, this is the time to start mapping out your content strategy. We also have a content working group to help figure out what is the content that we have, what is the content that we need to create, who's going to create it, and which I'm so lucky that I have such smart people around me in the organization, but who really understand learning. So we can geek out and figure out what are the learning personas, right? Who is the learner? What do they need to learn? What do we need them to learn? And kind of having that organized way of thinking about it, so it's not just random, just randomly putting things, but as you get going, the questions people ask, and don't forget to look at your search analytics too. In the community, what are people searching and getting answers to versus not getting answers? Those content gaps are actually really telling. That is a place to start creating content. If someone's looking for something, not finding it, start there. People are asking questions. You start to see these trends. And so then it just kind of becomes a flywheel, right? The more stuff is in there, the more people are searching and asking, the more informed your content roadmap can become. But again,
I think it also
externally, promote it internally. Don't forget to talk to people internally all the time to understand what they need from a content perspective.
I think that, over time, I'll give a perfect example, because that stuff, it's a very good point, is when you start looking at your search analytics, in the back end, it takes a little time, people to search and things like that. But then once they do, you start seeing a lot of trends. One of our things was on community, and I'll say this last thing, but one of the search words was, what was it? The search word kept coming up over and over and over. And I thought, we don't have any content around the search word. Why? This is crazy. And so I started creating webinars around it. No, it was just different people searching for that every single month. It was the highest rated search. And you can go see who it was. And so I started creating content. I started looking at webinars, and then I started creating blogs, and I captured that Q&A that were on the webinars, pushed it out on the community. And now we have a ton of content just on that topic, so that, it was just so much really good stuff to come out of it. You know what I mean? So Maria, this was really, really good. Thank you for coming on.
It's always such a pleasure chatting, and I really learned from you as well, how you're approaching similar problems, and where I like how we're thinking about things in a similar way, but
we think very similar
them in a different fashion, right? Because our communities are different, our users need different things from us, and so always a pleasure to chat to another professional.
Well, Maria, thank you for coming on Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Stetzel, and
Maria Ogneva.
Yes,
find
perfect.
me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I'll push all that.
Our awesome,
Go ahead.
our
Sorry.
awesome friend Brian Oblinger created a link that's a shortcut to my LinkedIn, and I think it's called everyoneknowsmaria.com.
Oh my God, I'll have to find that one for sure.
He reminds
right.
me of it like every time I see him. So if you go to that, it actually links to my LinkedIn. So that's one name. That's one way to find me. But yeah, feel free to connect on LinkedIn. And I am so excited to get a chance to chat with you, Chris, and looking forward to connecting to all of you on LinkedIn.
All right. Thanks, Maria.